What's gaming, gamers? Today, I'm going to go over a hunter build centered around the exotic pulse rifle Collective Obligation. This pulse rifle is from the Valve the Disciple raid, and if you haven't gotten it yet, I can't recommend it enough. I'll go over the specific subclass abilities, aspects, and fragments, as well as going into a bit of detail into why I've chosen them. I'll also detail the armor build, going over which mods you should have on which pieces. There will be timestamps in the description, along with video chapters to guide you, and a Destiny item manager link to the build in the description if you'd like to simply copy it and use it for yourself. As a bonus, this build doesn't require any seasonal mods, however I will mention a couple if they're noteworthy, as there's no reason to deny yourself the usefulness of the seasonal mods unless they're no longer available or you're doing a challenge run. First thing I'll do is talk about the gun itself, Collective Obligation. This gun is a random drop from the Valve the Disciple raid and comes with the exotic perk Void Leech and the trait Umbral Sustenance. Void Leech is its claim to fame. When shooting an enemy that is affected by a Void debuff, this gun leeches this debuff and stores it for further use. The debuffs are Weaken, Suppress, and Volatile. In case you're unaware of the Void 3.0 keywords, I'll quickly explain what the three debuffs mean. When an enemy is weakened, they take 15% more damage from all sources. When an enemy is suppressed, they are unable to use any of their abilities. This includes shooting their weapon. When an enemy is made volatile, they become encircled in Void Light. When this enemy takes additional damage, they will explode, causing damage to the enemy and any surrounding combatants. Importantly, this doesn't remove the debuff from the enemy it's leeched from, leaving that enemy vulnerable to whatever debuff is currently applied to it. Umbral Sustenance is Collective Obligation's trait, and it's insanely good for keeping uptime on the gun's DPS. Whenever you gain Devour, avoid Overshield, or become invisible, this gun's magazine is fully reloaded. As long as you've got a chain of any of those three buffs, your gun has an effectively infinite magazine. The gun also has a display to tell you which buffs you currently have leeched, although they're not marked in any way. They are consistent, however. The top one is Suppress, the middle one is Weaken, and the bottom one is Volatile. If the circle is lit up, that means you have that specific debuff leeched and can focus on getting your other ones. The display is unintuitive, which is probably my biggest gripe with the gun from a gameplay standpoint. It took me a bit to learn and remember which circles corresponded with which debuffs, so don't expect to be able to read it fluently immediately. Once you've leeched a debuff, hold your reload button to activate the Void Leech perk, and the gun will apply whichever debuffs you've leeched to whatever enemy you shoot while the perk is active. Hunter is a lot of fun to run Collective Obligation with. Invisibility pairs really well with the Umbral Sustenance trait, and we'll be going invisible a lot with this build as we're pairing the gun with the exotic chest piece Gyrfalcon's Hauberk. The subclass is the first thing we'll talk about. As far as supers go, you can run either Deadfall or Mobius Quiver. Deadfall lasts longer, has a shorter cooldown, and has a shorter cast time as you only shoot once, leaving you to mop up with Collective for longer. However, Deadfall only suppresses and weakens targets, it doesn't make them volatile. Also, killing enemies tethered by Deadfall doesn't create Orbs of Power, which are something we'll make good use of later on. Mobius Quiver has a longer cooldown, a longer cast time as you need to shoot 2 volleys of arrows, and lasts for a shorter amount of time on the ground. However, it does more damage if you hit targets with it, as there are more arrows. Enemies you hit become volatile as well as suppressed and weakened, and when tethered enemies die, they drop Orbs of Power. It is worth noting, though, that we're going to have a plethora of sources of volatile rounds, and the fact that Mobius makes enemies volatile isn't as good a selling point as it may sound. Back before Gyrfalcon's was changed, it may have been, but with the ease of access to volatile now, it's merely just another source and not one of the only sources. So when it comes to which super to use, it's entirely up to you. Do you prefer a shorter cooldown and cast time because you want to use Collective more? Deadfall's probably more your style. If you don't care about the super's cooldown and want a little more crowd control by spreading apart the 2 volleys of arrows, or would like the damage potential it offers to bosses, Mobius Quiver is the better option. In my opinion, neither of the two are objectively better than the other, but I prefer Mobius Quiver because I like the damage potential for bosses. Now to move on to abilities. For our dodge, Gambler's Dodge is the best option. As I explained when talking about Collective Obligation, the gun's trait, Umbral Sustenance, reloads the gun when going invisible. And spoiler alert, we're running the Vanishing Step aspect, which turns you invisible when you dodge, reloading Collective Obligation and getting our Smoke Bomb back in the process. Running Marksman's Dodge here is okay if you're using it for reloading your heavy, or a special weapon if you have one equipped, but that's all it's doing for you, and Smoke Bomb uptime is really strong for leeching the Weaken debuff. For the jump, Triple Jump is my favorite, but if you're a freak in the sheets, the Strafe and High Jumps work just fine. There's only one option for melee in the Smoke Bomb, and for our grenade, we'll run the Suppressor Grenade, which is effectively the centerpiece of the subclass's abilities. For aspects, we'll be running Vanishing Step, which turns you invisible when you dodge. Invisibility is a big part of how this build flows, as it reloads Collective Obligation for us and gives us volatile rounds when exiting due to Gyrfalcons. For our second aspect, we'll choose Stylish Executioner, as it increases the uptime of invisibility and gives us yet another source of weaken. After performing a Stylish Execution, your next melee attack while invisible weakens the target. A Stylish Execution is simply getting a kill on a void debuffed target. This will turn you invisible, and you will gain the weakening melee while you're invisible. If you wait out the 2-second Stylish Executioner lockout, getting a kill with this melee attack will turn you invisible again. However, we'll be going invisible so often, waiting for the lockout will never be an issue. Now onto our fragments. We've got 4 fragment slots because of our aspects, and we'll use all 4 of them to great effect. Firstly, we're running Echo of Persistence. This will make void buffs that are applied to you last longer. This increases the uptime of invisibility, devour, and void overshields. Increasing invisibility uptime is pretty big for the build. It gives us extra time to find adds to continue chaining invisibility, it gives more time to regenerate health if you need to, and it's almost like having a Graviton forfeit helmet on without the stat boost. Echo of Persistence does lower your mobility by 10, and mobility is the Hunter class stat, so keep that in mind. Your dodge cooldowns will be a little bit longer. If you wanted, and this is a big if, you could swap out Echo of Persistence for Echo of Instability. Echo of Instability makes it so getting a kill with your grenade grants your weapons volatile rounds. It also gives you plus 10 to your strength stat, and if you're leaning on your smoke grenades to weaken enemies, this will make the cooldown that much shorter. Additionally, you aren't hit with the minus 10 points in mobility, and if you're close to double 100s and you just like big numbers, this is an alternative. However, if you're running the Gambler's Dodge, Smoke Bomb uptime won't be an issue. Generally, you really shouldn't be going for kills with your grenade. It's the only source of suppress you have, and if you kill whatever you throw the grenade at, you won't be able to leech suppress off of them for collective. Plus, Gyrfalcons is already a source of volatile with a shorter cooldown, as it relies on your dodge and not your grenade. It does give your grenade some utility if you end up killing whatever enemy you throw it at least you get volatile out of it, but with how easy volatile is to come by, this should really only be done if you're close to a double or triple 100 in resilience and mobility or strength, and you want those stats over a more forgiving build. The next fragment we're running is Echo of Harvest. This fragment will drop an Orb of Power when getting a precision kill on any weakened enemy. According to Destiny Item Manager's Community Insights, this orb spawning ability has a 10-second cooldown. I trust Dim's Community Insights, but I've not tested it for myself personally, and I can't say for certain whether this is 100% accurate. The orb generation will be good for us, as our next fragment is Echo of Starvation. Picking up an Orb of Power grants us Devour. Devour is a really good buff to have procced as much as you can. Getting kills while Devour is active heals you to full health, gives you grenade energy, and extends Devour to its max duration. If you're consistently killing adds, you should have Devour procced constantly, leaving you nigh invincible if you're playing smart. For our last fragment, we're choosing Echo of Undermining. This gives our grenades a bunch more utility, as hitting any target with a grenade will weaken them, leaving that debuff ready to be leeched by collective. Echo of Undermining does come with a hefty minus 20 to our discipline stat, but as long as we've got a Devour chain going, the discipline stat is all but meaningless, as Devour kills grant us grenade energy. As far as armor affinities go, we'll run a Solar Helmet, Void Arms, Stasis Chest Piece, Solar Legs, and a Solar Cloak. On our helmet, we're going to use the Bountiful Wells mod in the Elemental slot. This will give us extra Elemental Wells for regenerating our abilities, and most importantly our grenade, even faster. For helmet-specific mods, we've got 1 Kinetic Siphon and 1 Harmonic Siphon. These will increase the amount of orbs we generate, and that will give us more chances at starting a Devour chain when we need it. For our arms, in the Elemental slot, we'll run Reaping Wellmaker. This makes your first kill after activating your class ability spawn an Elemental Well, and in combination with Bountiful Wells, it will spawn 2 Elemental Wells. This mod is another reason we want high mobility, as spamming dodges to get the wells will come in handy for regenerating abilities. In the arms specific slots, your best bet will be double bolstering detonations, but that's not usually possible with champion mods being almost exclusive to the arms slot. So, I recommend running at least 1 champion mod, preferably a pulse rifle mod if whichever season you're in has one, and 1 bolstering detonation. If you need both mod slots for champion mods though, that's not a problem, although those are about the only things I'd take over bolstering detonation, as the extra class ability energy will be really helpful in the spamming of your dodge ability and spawning wells for yourself. On our Gyrfalcons, the most important mod is Elemental Time Dilation. This will be helpful for us later, as it will keep Font of Might at its max potential. For the chest-specific slots, run whichever seasonal resistance mod is available. During Season of the Seraph, that mod is Energy Diffusion Substrate. If you don't want to run a seasonal resistance mod, or you don't have one unlocked yet, running a reserve mod for your heavy or special weapon is about the only useful alternative. On our legs, we'll run Font of Might along with Double Innervation. If you'd like, you can swap 1 Innervation mod for a Scavenger or Holster mod of your choosing, but Double Innervation is best if you really want to min-max your grenade cooldown. Font of Might will increase any damage that corresponds to your subclass element by 25%. Collective Obligation is void, as is our subclass, and this works just to increase our damage even further. Finally, for our cloak, we'll run another Font of Might. Additionally, we'll run Bomber in the class item specific slots as it reduces our grenade cooldown even further when using our dodge. So now that we've got the build sorted and I've explained why I've chosen what I've chosen, it's time to talk about the gameplay loop for this build. This build revolves around having Collective's Void Leech procced as consistently as possible. When entering a fight, the first thing you should look for is a major enemy to throw your grenade at. This will allow you to leech both suppress and weaken off of them. If you can't find a major, don't waste your grenade and instead use your smoke bomb to weaken an enemy along with dodging to make yourself invisible and give yourself volatile rounds. Once you found a major, throw your grenade at them and leech suppress. If you happen to kill them and can't get suppress, at this stage you should have both weaken and volatile, and you can activate Void Leech and start killing enemies while you spawn elemental wells to get your grenade back. You should also have a Devour chain either started or starting soon, as you'll be killing enemies rather quickly with Collective and spawning orbs with both the Kinetic Siphon and Harmonic Siphon mods. While you have no grenade, use your dodge ability on cooldown and spawn elemental wells. With a Devour chain going and elemental wells spawning, you should have your grenade back by the time Void Leech is over. Best practice with Void Leech is to use it at your leisure for 10 to 12 seconds, and use the last 3 to 5 seconds to search for an enemy you can prep with your debuffs. You want to shoot that enemy with 1 to 2 seconds remaining, and as soon as the Void Leech timer is gone from your screen, you can shoot them again a couple times to get any debuffs you had right back. If you miss this, either by accidentally killing the enemy you were trying to prep or having a teammate kill them by accident, it's not the end of the world. You can simply start this chain again from scratch. It is annoying when you lose suppress, as your grenade's the only source you have for it outside of your super, but with how fast you'll be regenerating it, it's not anything more than a minor nuisance and a short downtime to your overall DPS and ag clearing ability. As far as your super goes, waiting for a small group of enemies is always a smart decision with either Deadfall or Mobius Quiver. Deadfall will last longer, so it can be smarter to use it more focused on majors, champions, and bosses, whereas Mobius doesn't last as long and will likely have more effect helping you clear a room of ads if you miss your prepped enemy for Void Leech. This is situational, however, and it's up to you to decide when and how to use your super. To recap, and to be more concise, finding a grenade target is your first priority. A major is your best bet, as you can be assured they won't die to the grenade. Whether you hit or miss the grenade, dodge after you've thrown it to get some grenade energy stored up and start leeching debuffs. Once you've gotten as many as you can, use the Void Leech ability and kill everything unfortunate enough to be in the same room as you. Use dodge on cooldown to spawn wells and get your grenade and smoke bombs back. Use super however you see fit, and you'll be using Collective Obligation to its fullest potential in no time. And that's my build for any hunter wanting to use Collective Obligation. It's so much fun when you get the flow down, and to anyone who hasn't gotten it yet, it is more than worth your time and effort to wait for Valve the Disciple to be the weekly featured raid and to farm Rolk for the gun. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Or you'll see me, because this is a video. But there's no webcam, so you're not really seeing me.